When Stranger Things premiered in 2016, it didn't just feel like a show set in the 80s. It felt like the 80s itself. The textures, the sounds, the colors, everything seemed ripped straight out of a forgotten Steven Spielberg film. But this wasn't nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. The Duffer Brothers didn't just borrow imagery from the decade. They rebuilt its emotional and cinematic DNA piece by piece. And nowhere is that clearer than in the first episode, Chapter 1, The Vanishing of Will Byers. Because if you hold that pilot script next to the screenplay of E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, something magical happens. The two begin to speak to each other. Today, we're diving into that hidden dialogue between Stranger Things and E.T., a dialogue of structure, tone, and emotion that shows how storytelling can be an act of resurrection. Part 1. The Opening Mirror, from Fear to Suburbia. Every story teaches us how to watch it, and both E.T. and Stranger Things open with the same lesson. Before we feel wonder, we must first feel fear. In E.T., the camera moves through a dark forest. Creatures scurry, lights flash, and then panic. A small alien is left behind as engines roar and keys jingle through the night. In Stranger Things, a scientist runs through a flickering hallway, terrified of something unseen. A shadow consumes him, and suddenly we're outside, in the calm safety of a suburban cul-de-sac. Both stories use the same rhythm: danger first, then innocence. The forest becomes the lab, the suburb stays the refuge. And in that contrast, we learn the rule of these worlds. Horror and home exist side by side. Part 2, The Basement Campaign. Childhood as a stage. The heart of both stories beats in a basement. For Spielberg, it's a dining table covered with pizza boxes and Dungeons and Dragons maps. For the Duffers, it's Mike Wheeler's basement. Same dice, same laughter, same energy humming through the fluorescent light. But those D&D games aren't just decoration, they're prophecy. In E.T., the kids play late into the night, talking about portable holes and vanishing, echoes of Elliot's wish to escape his ordinary life. In Stranger Things, Will Byers faces the Demogorgon in-game, and hours later, faces its real-world counterpart in the dark. The game becomes a mirror of the story, a bridge between imagination and danger. Childhood fantasy doesn't fade here. It bleeds into reality. In this world, belief isn't naive, it's power. Part 3, Wheels of Freedom, the bike as symbol. Every generation of kids has its tool of freedom. For us, it might be phones or game consoles. For the 80s, it was bikes. In both E.T. and Stranger Things, bikes are more than transport. They're portals. When Will rides into the night, his bike light flickers like a heartbeat, the final pulse before he disappears. When Elliot pedals into the woods, he's chasing wonder itself. And when that bike lifts off the ground, framed against the moon, it becomes the symbol of everything E.T. stands for: escape, magic, and the belief that love can break gravity. In Stranger Things, that dream turns darker. The bike doesn't fly, it falls. But the echo remains. Every pedal stroke is an act of hope against the unknown. Part 4, The Lost Creature and the Cold Adults. Then comes the visitor. In Spielberg's world, it's a stranded alien with glowing skin and gentle eyes. In Hawkins, it's a girl in a hospital gown, head-shaved, marked by experiments. Both are outsiders, fragile, hunted, and wordless. Both need protection, and both find it in the empathy of children. And what stands against them? The adults, faceless, mechanical, driven by fear, disguised as science. In E.T., they're defined not by faces, but by the sound of keys at their belts. In Stranger Things, they wear hazmat suits and move like ghosts through humming corridors. The children see life, the adults see data. And that's the emotional architecture both stories share. The belief that innocence understands truth better than authority ever will. Part 5, Light and Sound, the language of the unknown. Both worlds speak through light. In E.T., the alien's heart glows red, a pulse of emotion made visible. In Stranger Things, danger flickers through light bulbs, phone receivers, and Christmas lights. Electricity becomes emotion. Communication happens not through words, but through signals. Just as E.T. uses his glowing touch to say, "I'm here," Will speaks to his mother through flickering bulbs that spell out, "right here." Both moments are built on the same emotional equation, connection that defies logic. Even the sound design echoes. Low rumbles, strange hums, distorted frequencies. They turn fear into atmosphere. Part 6. The Invisible Bond. Love. Across worlds. At the core of E.T. lies a miracle, the psychic link between Elliot and the alien. When E.T. is sick, Elliot feels weak. When E.T. heals, so does the flower on the windowsill. It's Spielberg's way of saying empathy is literally life-giving. In Stranger Things, that idea becomes the engine of the story. Joyce feels her son's presence across dimensions. Mike forms a bond with Eleven that's both emotional and telepathic. The two stories share the same philosophy. The supernatural isn't just horror or spectacle. It's the external shape of emotion. Connection is the real magic. Part 7. The Resurrection of the 80's Heart. When the Duffer Brothers wrote Stranger Things, they weren't just referencing Spielberg. They were resurrecting him. They studied his rhythm, his lenses, his warmth. But more importantly, they inherited his faith. That stories about monsters are really stories about families. The monsters, whether Demogorgon or Dissection Lab, are metaphors for loneliness. And in both worlds, the cure for loneliness isn't victory. It's friendship. It's love that says, "Stay with me," even when the portal is closing. Stranger Things doesn't just imitate E.T. It remembers it. It remembers a time when stories believed that wonder and fear could exist in the same breath. When kids could save the world with flashlights and bikes. And when love, no matter how strange, could reach across galaxies. Or the upside down. That's not nostalgia. That's faith in storytelling itself. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe, script snack, and tell me, which 80's film should we explore next?